So let's now talk about keywords and arrays. Now keywords, as you know, are words that are reserved for specific languages, right? So for instance, in PHP, if you want to write an if statement, it would be if, and then if you had an else with another condition, then else if with no space between else and if, and followed by else. Okay, and this little table over here, which figure 26.5, gives you a list of many of the PHP keywords. Now arrays, and we've discussed arrays before in the context of JavaScripting. These are groups of related data elements. So you have a name, and then you have braces, and you have index, and the index could begin at 0. Okay. Now use the count function in PHP, and that is similar to the dot length that we used in JavaScripting to refer to the size of the array. Okay. And there is something called for each loops and reset and key and next. So I'm just going to dive right into an example or a bunch of examples to explain to you how arrays work in case of PHP. So let's take a look at this first example. So here we have, and I'm going directly to the PHP code. Okay, we're printing something out. We're printing create the first array. All right, and then we start creating it right away. $first 0 equals 0, $first 1 equals 1, $first 2 equals 2, $first, there's nothing here, no subscript, equals 3. Okay, what this is going to do is automatically create an array with 4 elements and populate them with these 4 words. Okay, now traversing through this array can be done in the same way we traversed arrays in JavaScripting by using a for loop. So we say for $i equals 0, $i less than count $first. So count $first. Now count, this method takes this array, the name of the array $first, and figures out the size of the array. So as long as $i is less than the size of the array, which in this case is 4, okay, this will keep iterating. Okay, and each time you would increment I by 1 at the end of each iteration. Now in each iteration you would print element $i, which would be 0 in the first iteration, is $first 0, and $first 0 is the word 0. Similarly, element 1 is $first 1, $first 1 is 1. Okay, and so on and so forth, and it will go all the way to $first 3. This will all, $first 3, and this is automatically populated in $first 3 because that's the next available element. Okay, now let's create one more array. Okay, this time we just use this method called array, and we give it 4 arguments or parameters, and the parameters are the actual values we want stored in the array. Okay, so automatically this array called $second is created. It has 4 elements in it, and the 4 elements are 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and again the way we traverse through it and print it out is very similar to the way we dealt with $first. The third thing, and this is different in case of PHP now, is that you can create arrays with non-numerical indices. So for instance, here we have $3rd Arctic, $3rd Lunatic, $3rd Gallant. Now here, instead of the usual 0, 1, 2, we're seeing words, okay, strings, okay, and that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly all right to have non-numerical indices. And in this case, the 21, the 18, the 23 are the actual values stored in each of those elements. Now obviously we cannot traverse through this using our usual for loop, right? Now in case of for loops with numerical, in case of arrays with numerical indices, we use a for loop and we go from 0, and as long as it's less than the size of the array, well, we can no longer do that because the index is no longer numerical, right? So now we use a slightly different way to traverse through the array. Okay, so what we do is we use something called, again we use the for loop, but we use the reset method. Now when we say reset $3rd, it automatically takes the pointer to the array and places it at the first element. Okay, so that means it's been placed at $3rd Arctic. Okay, so now that it's been placed over there, the pointer, when we say key $3rd, it's automatically referring to Arctic. This is the key or the index. okay, and that's now stored in $element. Okay, and in here within the loop, $element, in this case Arctic, is, and then we see third $element, right, which would mean $third Arctic. $third Arctic is 21, so it would print Arctic is 21. Okay, and this is when the next $third kicks in, and it moves the pointer to the second item in the array, which is this lunatic, right? So again, in this case, what it would do is it would first get us the $element, okay, which is the key. Now because the pointer is now pointing to this element, the key now is lunatic, okay, and that's now stored in $element. So here it will print lunatic is $third lunatic, which is 18. So it would print lunatic is 18, and it would do the similar thing for the last element as well. Now let's see another way in which you can create an array with non-numerical indices. So here we have an array called $4th. We call the array element, and we give it these 12 pieces of input. And what are these 12 pieces of input? Now each piece of input, okay, has something like, in this case, January, a string, and then you have the symbol followed by the equal to sign, greater than sign, equals first. February 2nd, March 3rd. What that means is that we're creating this array called $4th with the subscripts or the indices January, February, March, April, May, June, and the actual values being stored in this $4th array are 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and so on. Okay, so which means that we now have an array with the subscripts January, February, March all the way to December, and within each element we have strings stored. So the first element contains first, the second element contains second, the third element, or the one whose subscript is March, contains the word third. Now this is where we can use something called a for each loop to be able to grab things from this array. Okay, and the way that works is like this. So we say for each $4th, the name of your array, as, which is a reserved word, $element, and that same symbol, $value. So what this is going to do is going to move through the array one by one, beginning with the first element and ending with the last element. And the first time it will store January in dollar element and first in $value. The second time it will store February in $element and second in $value. The third time it will store March in $element and third in $value. So the first time around it would print January is the first month, okay, and in the 12th iteration it would say December is the 12th month. Okay, so here is the output of the program. Again, if you want to try this out, you have to take the code, store it in a file, call it something.php, upload it to Ultra Vista, and then access it using a browser. That's the way you can actually see this in action, because you need a PHP server in order to be able to run this code. So please keep that in mind. You cannot do it on your local host unless you have a PHP server.